Think I'm live. We'll make sure everything's working. Yes. All right. Yeah, I probably shouldn't be making this room, but it's just annoying comments. And so I figure, what the hell? The weather's kind of marginal. I have a little bit of time. So I'll deal with a couple of these, I think, rude comments. And such. So Matthew H. This is the guy from my other channel, primarily. Whatever, some context. Yeah, he's not here for physics. Yeah. You don't need to know anything about hyperborealoids. Well, I don't know if I've ever said those words, but what I've said is I think it's idiotic to have as your notion of how the mechanics work to create more complexity in terms of how things can function. And I'm just saying there's so much complexity in something hyperborealoiding that you'd have to have a whole new physics underneath the physics to be able to keep the hyperboroid functioning. So um, I think it has zero probability of being a real element of the function of the basic mechanics of atomic structure, let's say. Einstein was doing multivariable calculus when he was 13. So, doing complex math, or let's just say abstract math, that means you're special. Doesn't mean that you just did something most people didn't do, like other people out playing baseball or something. You decide to do calculus when you're 13. Therefore, you're specially endowed with now, you're the special ivory tower person, and you know the reality. Maybe at 13, he still believed in God. Does that mean he was brilliant? I don't think so. But anyway, and you claim that you have just as much knowledge as he did at the time of his death. I'm saying that I obviously have what he didn't have. Okay. And one of the things that I had that he didn't have was I didn't have a stupid idea in my head that was in the way. So I would argue that Einstein had some notions in his head that are incompatible with reality. He thought they were true and they're not, like light being bent, like spooky action that he claimed to call other things spooky action, entanglement, when his whole gravity theory was spooky action. His whole time dimension is spooky action. All of this stuff happens, without any actor. Um, so I'd say in a way, yes, he was wrong, fallible. He made some mistakes, and I didn't make the same mistakes. So I don't have that dirt in my way when I look through the magnifying glass. I don't have the same pieces of crap in the way, the wrong ideas. Yeah, that's my claim. I'm aggressively asserting that claim. There's no bent space. There's a real force. We're going back to Newton, and we're saying, let's build on what Newton knew. And he uses the word, he uses the big F, F, F. There's a force. Yeah. Okay. Not a spooky action. How much spooky action? No, there's no, and well, whatever. I'm asserting, I make direct assertions and I ask direct questions. You don't deal with either one of those things. You don't either show how my assertions are ludicrous or completely unfounded or undemonstrable by any evidence, or do you answer my questions? You don't do either one of those two things. You just say somehow I'm wrong because my name's not Albert Einstein. I didn't do calculus when I was 13. I did something else. I mean, it's just so rude. So yes, and again, where's this argument about how much knowledge you have? I would argue there's probably lots of people had more knowledge of combustion engines and even physics than, Edward Diesel or whoever, whoever invented these things, right? The Wright brothers. There was other guys who attempted to conquer the air. They might have been more knowledgeable than the Wright brothers. They just weren't right. They just didn't have it exactly correct. They had some wrong information or some wrong ideas, and those wrong ideas crippled their airplane. Just the way it works out. It's not my fault that Einstein was wrong about things. It's not my fault that the evidence supporting his ideas, for some of his ideas, is incredibly weak, and yet you people talk as if it's an infallible truth. I mean, you're just like religious kooks. You just say it. Like, I know, I have complete faith in it. I don't need any evidence. I don't need to have some trial and argue about, how rational is it to believe in Sasquatch? You believe. Fine. I'm saying I have no reason to believe because the evidence is lousy. Okay. Also, on top of that, you've completed his life's work, ? Yeah, that's my assertion. He, for his whole life, thought two things that are very similar to what I think. That the universe is clockwork. I think those are his words, actually. Okay, it's a mechanism. It has a cause and effect mechanism. It's a Rube Goldberg device that does function within a set of rules. I mean, obviously, Rube Goldberg devices function in the rules of physics, but his argument is there's rules, okay, whatever those are, and everything functions within those rules. There's no spooky action. There's no something happens for no good reason. No, everything happens for a reason, and it's simple. That was his assertion. That's my assertion. He thought there likely is some mechanism connecting because it has to be simple, like a checkerboard. So having quantum mechanics and bent space isn't going to work. Now, like I said, maybe he wanted to bend space quantum mechanics, but maybe he'd also be willing to compromise both of them, throw them both up in the air, and try to make something new, okay, better. But yeah, that's what he was looking for. I don't know if he ever directly said something like, well, look, all these forces move the same speed. They must be the same thing. I don't know if he ever said that, but clearly that was part of his thinking. And the simple truth is, I found a way to connect all of the forces and turn them into one force. The force that nobody calls a force, especially light. Okay? That's where they missed something. They didn't realize that this photon thing is a force. It's energy. Anyway. All right. Anyway, so screw your satire and your sarcasm. Why don't you make an argument of some kind of real argument, not one saying that my hair's too blonde for me to have the right answer. Not some stupid comment, an ignorant person's comment. If I was a black man, you're too black to have the right answer. I mean, this is just cheap rhetoric. It's garbage. All right. It's great that you want to do physics. No, I'm describing physics. I'm not doing physics. Doing physics is saying, I'm going to tell you exactly how much this weighs or how much volume it's taking up in space. That's doing physics. Explaining physics and even understanding physics is understanding the concept. Oh, yes, I get it. This is matter. It's dense. It's consuming. That is, it's filling the empty space with stuff, something. So there's more something stuff here in this piece of space than there is in this piece of space. So that's understanding physics. That's what I'm doing, is understanding physics. I'm not wasting a bunch of time saying, I know exactly how many atoms are in here, and I have the calculus to prove it. That's doing physics. Anyway, and attempt to find out more about how the universe functions. Well, as I'm demonstrating and what I'm directly stating is that I've already found out. I haven't attempted to do something. I have successfully done something. And the point is you have to in some way counter argue if you say I'm wrong. So you have to point out how I'm wrong to point out how the lens is the wrong shape, or that I'm wrong to point out it seems like a gimmick that photons are the only thing exempt to the inverse square law. Anyway, but please pay your dues. So what dues do I have to pay? I've spent 7 years watching some physics lectures. Spent plenty of time getting up to speed on some of the terminology and what exactly they're asserting. Like I've actually watched Leonard Susskind talk about the stupid holograms on the surface of black holes and their almost silly notion that because Hawking says black holes die, that somehow the information has to remain, when the whole notion that black holes evaporate when they don't really evaporate, evaporate in the sense of disappear without excluding the without leaking the mass they consumed, by essentially destroying matter. Okay, because they believe that they have a need to retain the information, but you don't have to retain the information if the information leaves as real mass. So again, if they had an understanding of gravity in the first place, where they understood that gravity was actually created by a real energy force, it wasn't, real photons created, then they wouldn't have this energy problem. See, it's the whole point I keep bringing up. They're the ones with the wrong notions. And you're telling me their notions have to be right, and I have to be wrong because I'm challenging them. And my argument to you is no, I'm making these arguments, and you don't have any rational counter argument except, no, you're an idiot. I don't have to accept that, okay, until you prove it. You tell me I need to learn. No, I don't think I do. I think you need to learn, okay, what mistakes are, and that smart people can make mistakes. And some smart people have made mistakes. Jeez, how the universe functions. But please pay your dues. I have paid my dues in the sense that I've lived long enough. Well, I even learned. So I paid my dues like Einstein. When Einstein was 13, he was doing calculus. When I was 13, I was doing risk assessment. So I spent a lot of time watching failure in the world, okay, and recognizing that this is kind of a stupid equation, and this is a stupid equation because doesn't turn out in the end that this makes any sense. It seems like you got more dead bodies than you have saved souls, more people in hell than there are heaven. So what's the point? Anyway, learn as much math as you can. So again, he thinks math is physics. So he thinks being able to formalize, that is, derive equations and do abstract math, somehow, to do this specific thing, being able to do all those specific things is understanding general concepts. And I think that's garbage. I think Einstein's own testimony would argue against that most of his insights didn't come through doing mathematical equations. I don't think Einstein ever said, I never saw the universe as clearly as I could see it through mathematics. I don't think he ever said anything like that. So you can pretend understanding of concepts and how they can work together is completely about putting abstract numbers on things, and therefore I have established how the thing functions. As I stated before, drawing a round wheel and drawing a square wheel and then rolling them will illustrate the difference between round and square a lot better than me showing you the two formulas. But anyway, so want to say, God, what a cunt. Oh, damn it, I'm not supposed to do that. let's see, I mean, it's just so disgusting. So no, I don't need to learn math. Okay, I need to understand math. I understand plus, minus, divide, and the equal sign. I understand math as you can and start from the ground up. Well, take my advice and pull your head out of your ass. Before you attempt to tackle the current major unresolved problems in theoretical physics. The biggest problem in theoretical physics is it's completely irrational, and they do nothing but jump evidence. They get a tiny piece of evidence and they jump to huge conclusions. They haven't figured out that's the wrong thing to do. That's what kids do. Okay. That's what superstitious people do. That's not what a thoughtful person does. They've been incredibly unthoughtful and undisciplined in their physics. They ought to go back and see what a real physicist looked like. Newton, a religious kook. Never put any of his religion in his physics. Anyway. The joy of physics is amazingly baby talk. The joy of physics, isn't that just so special? No. Is learning more about the world. No, it's like any problem you solve. It's like any puzzle. The joy is in the resolution. Eureka! Completed. No more irritation. It's like scratching an itch. It's solving a problem. And the satisfaction, okay, in not being harassed by the problem anymore. You put the grease on the squeaky wheel and it stops squeaking. It's very pleasurable no longer to have to listen to that stupid squeak. That's all this is. Your bad physics, your bad explanation of reality is an irritation, okay? And I have solved the problem of the irritation. I've gotten rid of your wooey, religious, fake, phony, spooky action physics. All right. Anyway, more about the world. Not, I don't even know what this is. Bastardizing it. So where's the proof that I'm the one who has bastardized when clearly virtual photon doesn't sound like anything called physics. Bent space. I mean, the anti-divergence. So Susskind calls it the anti-divergence. You think that's not bastardizing concepts? Yeah, I think that's what it's called. They call it annihilation events. Do you think anything's really annihilated? Really? Okay. In an attempt to ward off the chance of having the word failure written on your tombstone. Well, again, that's all we're fighting for in life is our integrity. I'd say you have none. Okay. You are demonstrating here overtly that you can't do what honorable people do, which is get into the ring and actually throw an honest punch. You're just throwing mud, trying to push sand into my eyes, trying to kick sand into my eyes. You're not fighting any kind of fair fight here. Oh, if I don't behave exactly like Einstein and like not change my underwear, I therefore can't do physics. Yeah, I can. All right. I don't have to do it his way. And the whole point is, as my argument is, he did it wrong. And the evidence that he did it wrong is kind of glaring, and nobody wants to admit it, like the Eddington experiment that wasn't repeated. Why don't you explain to me why 2 years from the 100th anniversary of Einstein's theory, and just 2 years from the anniversary of the Eddington experiment, there's the most perfect eclipse over the most technically advanced country in the world. All right, perfect weather conditions, and nobody redoes Eddington's experiment. Nobody. Zero. No photographic plates, no well-done experiment at all with big giant telescopes. And it's not done. Why? Well, that's right, because maybe they figured out, hey, you can't do this experiment. It's impossible. Yeah. All right. Because having the words moronic failure is 100 times worse than having it may have failed, but at least he gave it an honest shot written on your tombstone. Well, again, the bottom line is you're either right or wrong. That's just a fact. Good intentions are nice, but they're no help at all, especially in circumstances where millions and millions of lives could be at stake. So being right and wrong is important. I'm perfectly willing to defend my theory against a rational argument. You're not making a rational argument. You're saying because Einstein did calculus when he was 13, he was right about everything. He didn't make any mistakes. He didn't fail. I'm saying the evidence sort of indicates that there's a huge failure here, mostly created by the media that was too stupid to understand the reality when it said Einstein right about relativity when Einstein was not right about, first, they never proved that the photons did this silly stuff and, that there was such a thing as lensing. And then second, even if they prove that, it doesn't make Einstein's theory right. It just makes one piece of it, one statement right. Just as when they show there's a relationship between velocity and time dilation, that is clocks breaking, that doesn't mean there's any such thing as a time dimension, and it certainly doesn't mean that there's any such thing as time frames. So, garbage argument. This garbage. I mean, I put up hard factual statements, assertions, claims. Dispute them. If you think they're wrong and moronic, dispute them with some sort of argument. I mean, I've shown them. A field is made out of the force bits. The force bits don't exist. There's no field. Okay. I pointed out how your theory has huge energy problems, most obvious in magnetism. Where did the energy come from to push the magnets together? Where was mass consumed? Where was chemistry converted to release the energy necessary to move the magnets? Where did it come from? Or is it just spooky action again? They're written. I've stated the things. Now, you either have an argument or you don't have an argument. Show me evidence of any experiment that proves any of these assertions, claims to be wrong. You can't do that. Any good experiment, by the way. I do not agree that time is a function. Well, I don't really care, but let's just say I did care what you think. I've made an argument. You just really don't get it. I've made an argument why it's a function. And it's proven in the sense that you have absolutely zero evidence that a photon ever moves any variable speed. Photons always cover distance at exactly the same speed. And every other piece of energy does the same thing. So that is, gravity travels distance at the same speed. Magnetism travels distance at exactly the same speed. And the only time something might change, like light going through a medium, goes through the medium slower, it's not because the absolute distance, okay, is the same. The light is actually traveling through the medium in a non-linear manner, which slows it down. But it itself doesn't slow down. Now, you don't have any evidence that that's ever wrong. So you want to believe it's something else, that's your prerogative. But there's no evidence for any other function. That would mean that time could be manipulated. An idiotic statement for which I cannot possibly come up with any understanding exactly how, when you assert something directly, that that's a constant speed that can't change, it always has to take this long to cover this much distance in a straight line. Somehow that's manipulatable. How do you manipulate that? How? I mean, it's an insane aversion of reality. It's moronic, oxymoronic. It's a non sequitur. It's a, anyway, manipulated to create different outcomes. Well, here we go. Like in a computer. Okay, how exactly could that possibly be? I mean, it's amazing. He thinks computers have something to do with the speed of light. It's like a computer. Functions in a computer can be changed. It's not the same as a function in software programming. Those functions are not anything like functions in the universe. They're not comparable. Functions in software programming are exactly the opposite, and they're, generally speaking, complex events, not elemental events. Nobody, except we go back to assembly programming, where the functions are go to. That's the only function. Go to a memory location. There's only one function in real computer programming, and the function is go to a memory location to find an instruction where the next go to is. They're just go to. So the only function that really is a function, an elemental function in computer programming, is go to. Maybe if then, you could call that, if then, if go to, if not go to some other number. That's it. So again, you're not really understanding that the elemental functions are different than the big functions written in software programs. Function in a computer that can change, the computer reacts differently. You cannot do that with time. So again, no one would assert that. It's just a bizarre perversion of reality. You make a direct assertions, and then people just turn into this babbly mush. You have no way unraveled the fact that it is a function that light moves a constant speed from point A to point B, that force, that there is a thing called the speed of force, and that in every experiment it is demonstrated to be a real thing. All right, with time can be manipulated or changed. Time is just a measurement of movement. So again, it's not just, it's the byproduct of the fact that there's no evidence that movement can happen any faster than the speed of light, and that light is always consistent, which gives the function a consistency. Once you have something that always moves the same speeds, you see, now you can't manipulate. Now you can't be fooled. Oh. All right. Time only witnesses movement and maps the path of matter. So again, time doesn't map anything. That's just nonsense, frankly. So, Freebird. I love, Freebird. You think you're entitled to take that name, Freebird? Yeah, whatever. Ugh, it's garbage. All right. Yeah, so we're done. All right. So now we'll just do some regular comments. So I wasn't terribly, I didn't go insane. But I just don't get these people. I'm making direct assertions, make direct counter arguments. Link me to your proof of something. Generally speaking, I want it in some form that isn't. I mean, if you're going to link me to some PDF file, I'm just giving you fair warning. You only get one shot. So if you're going to force me to, like, you say, well, here's proof of Eddington's experiment, and you're going to force me to read, 10 pages of a PDF, and then I prove that, oh, yeah, well, that experiment never got past the error margin of the experiment. That is, their results could not be called a confirmation because the amount of error in the experiment was higher than the degree of the confirmation. Then you're not allowed to do it again. Okay, you get your one chance to prove something, and if you prove it with garbage and you waste my time, that's all you're going to get. All right, because I'm not going to waste my time over and over again. All right. So make sure your proof is a proof. All right. You don't have an ounce of understanding. Again, a meaningless mush, not a counter argument to a single thing I've said, and absolutely no understanding of terminology. Again, meaningless rubbish. It's painfully obvious to anyone who knows just a bit. So you're just saying, as we, the liars and fakers, the people who can't make an argument even. You can't even make an argument, and you're claiming some authority to judge the match. You're worse than those people who can't teach. No, people who can't write shit comments. You're the lame-o. I'll just remove it for now, and then I'll block you after the next one. But how non-life, completely off the subject, genealogy changed into life biology also, I mean, it's just not all that magical. It's just that it's complex. Obviously, something simple like salt dispersion into a liquid, can be complex in that how each little bit moves and how it happens, the density as the saturation increases and the amount of ions increases, and then they has to overcome the ionic pressure and blah, blah, blah. Anything can be complex. But the idea of what's happening, the concept of evolution is so simple. So clearly these simple one little change at a time over billions of years, you can figure out that the structure changes enough over time to become more and more complex. But it's just one little change at a time. Dumbass. Also, why Americans so fat? I love channel my name, Hong Hoi from China. I don't know what any of that means, but John West isn't Hung Ho, so I don't know what that means. You got engaging. You're not engaging with the models. Oh, so I have to engage with models now. So they don't have one model. But that's not even true. I'm, of course, challenging the models. I've described the model. The model for magnetism is a virtual photon. Now, why don't you show me how they think the virtual photon works? Feynman uses the word like somehow we've explained magnetism with a virtual photon. Why don't you show me the virtual photon working? Because they don't have any model for it. You can say they do, but they don't have any. Okay. And you're not challenging anything. So again, I'm clearly challenging it. Clearly pointing out how the evidence is either weak or non-existent or completely falsifiable as rubbish. Anything, because you only misconstrue what other people say. So that's just a lie. I clearly point out how your assumptions can't be backed up with anything called evidence. You just assert. You make assertions. This is true. Photons are bent by gravity. I point out how your evidence lacks any consistency whatsoever. It has no principles. The lens is the wrong shape. You create a fake exemption for photons that doesn't have any rational rhyme or reason to it. No explanation for why photons get hit by more light. So as a photon goes by, it gets hit by twice as much light from a light bulb. Is that your theory too? Rubbish. As usual, you only deflect every possible criticism. They're not criticisms. They're just waste of time. You're fat and have a small penis. There, are we done? And you're likely a pedophile. There, are we done? Will you please respond to my critique? It's right on subject. That's entirely what's motivating you is clearly your small inverted penis. It's clearly the only reason why you're making comments. Because you're a petty, small penis fucking pedophile. Clearly. Oh, timeout means delete. Oh, okay. Well, good. So we're done with that. Just a waste of time. And such. So I think I did all I needed to do here. So what the next step here is to make this, I guess, clear. Was I was thinking about draft science. This should be the right thing. Yes. All right. So you have this idea of the chaos. It starts off with the universe, a bunch of little bits moving the speed of light. And what isn't in these drawings is like a nice, like this drawing sort of illustrates it. That in a sea of chaos, every single point you could ever make a point in the sea of chaos, from that point's perspective, everything is heading right for it. Okay, it's like from our perspective, looking up at the universe, it's like every photon is pointed towards us. Like all the stuff going some other way doesn't hit us. So the only thing we see is rays of reality coming right for us. So in a sea of chaos, it all turns into a sea of pressure. It's heading right for me. It's heading right for me. It's heading right for me. And that's the beginning of gravity. That's the beginning of the idea of the constant pressure. I'm on the website now. Well, isn't that nice? Yeah, most of it's accurate. I mean, there's a few, I got to fix a few things. I mean, this stuff is all good, about getting the pressure thing, photons, and but there's a couple. This is really perfect here. This is just fine, but it gets a little funky on magnetism because I still have the neutral gravitational bit, and I got to get rid of that. So this drawing is correct here, red and black, but this is wrong. This drawing still has a little G particle. G particle is irrelevant. And the 2x thing is just really a way of saying plus and minus. So I should just make it clear that it's just charge. So these drawings have to go. So anyway, and yeah, I really got to get to writing. I just hate it. So. But anyway, I got to do more of it. It's just so time consuming writing. Everything's time consuming. I'm just way past it. I mean, I've got enough of an argument here. It's just you people are just being belligerently slow learners. I mean, this theory, like, I'll just keep comparing it to evolution. I mean, once somebody explains evolution to you, it just fits so well. And you say, God, yeah, that's got it. Sure, of course, that's how it happened. It's obvious. I mean, it's easy. And it's easy to just recognize that, yeah, the universe is really simple. There's just force moving the speed of light, and then little solid bits, probably made out of force, but let's not get into that. Little solid bits that get pushed around by the force. That's all there is. Pushed around means they absorb, they get hit, they reflect, and they move. And they get hit, and they move, and they reflect. Yeah. And all they do is consume movement. They trap it. It stays in them for a while. Sometimes a very long while. See, that's another thing I want to get to is this, because they have this view, this stupid information view of the universe with the stupid holographic crap. And the real point is that you can sort of understand that if there was a little photon starting at one side of the universe and a little photon starting at the other side of the universe, now theoretically they could both travel across the universe and never hit anything, never get involved with anything, never do anything. But the truth is that's not what happens in the universe. The truth is that in some way, some mechanism, they get turned into electrons, let's say, and they end up with being a three-dimensional object now, where they have pressure in all three directions. They have materiality, but they don't have movement because they're neutral. They have the same amount of stuff going both ways in the three dimensions. So they don't, by themselves, move anywhere. You have to constantly push them. If you want them to go somewhere, you have to keep hitting them. And that's the beginning of the process. And then you create atoms and create all this. So you had stuff that was going somewhere else, and it never gets there because it gets caught up in all of these complex relationships with things, moving things in this way, and then moving them this way, and then moving them this way, and then moving them this way, or moving them in a circle, or moving them back and forth, and they get trapped in those traps. And so that's their information. The information is that, yes, the universe changed because the photon hit something else, didn't go where it was going, changed that outcome because now it's not going to hit something else. So the universe is now different than it would have been if it didn't hit that thing, for two reasons. One reason, because it didn't go where it was going to go, which was it was going to hit this thing over here, which is a different universe. And it didn't do that. Okay. Because it's doing this. Yeah. But there's no need to save anything called information. The information isn't written anywhere. The information isn't on the surface of a black hole somewhere. There's no roadmap to what happened. There's no fingerprints left behind. The fingerprint is the structure of the universe itself. The universe is its hologram. It can't be a projection because it is the thing itself. It's just so stupid. Your questions have already been answered. Well, where? Can you show? Do you want to give me a link to the answers? Because I don't see them. The light detected was also predicted to have followed a 1R curve in Newton's theory as well. Well, that's just wrong. So you can say that, but it's not true. Show me where Newton took away the gravity's R squared. Newton discovers that gravity is an R squared thing, and you're saying that Newton, on his own, decided he didn't even know photons move at the speed of light. Let's understand that. Or gravity. And well, wait, and he didn't know the speed of light, and you're saying that he knew that photons were immune to gravity. That's just idiotic. That they got hit by twice as much gravity. I mean, the whole point of it being inverse square just means it comes out at two dimensions, two spherical dimensions, this dimension and this dimension. So it spreads both ways. That's the R squared. Why would Newton say, no, it only senses gravity going this way, and it doesn't sense gravity going this way? Why would Newton say that? So that's just obvious nonsense. The 2x factor comes from spectral component of the GR metric. You can say nonsense like that. It means absolutely nothing. The point is the inverse square law, okay, weakens gravity substantially. And to make photons immune, it's just like the light bulb example. It's like saying, because I think I'm time dilated, that somehow I can go past the light bulb at a set speed, and somehow I got twice as much light as anything else that goes at that speed. So something else travels at exactly the same speed and only 50 photons hit it. And when I go by at exactly the same speed, somehow 100 photons hit me. You obviously don't understand. Moreover, the lensing problem is not a problem. Well, I've already pointed out how, yes, it is. Because light rays are on a fixed circumference, get converged inward. How does a lens that converges, that bends the light on the outside less, so something's coming, something smaller, right? We're not talking about something bigger than the lens. We're talking about something smaller than the lens. The light going this way has to be bent more to get to us than the light going this here. Gravity is exactly the opposite. I mean, I've already made these arguments. He obviously doesn't want to pay any attention to them. Okay, so are on a fixed circumference get converged inward, so special alignments can create stretchings. There's no stretchings. There's no any such thing. there's either you bend the light enough to get to a focus or you don't bend it enough. And it clearly doesn't get bent in the right way enough. He did know about the speed of light during his time. Another false premise. Well, yes, yeah. And like I say, he might have known that light wasn't instantaneous, but I'm not sure what he knew. But regardless, the point is there's no, you made the assertion. You said that Newton said light isn't affected by the inverse square law of gravity, when of course it was. That's why Newton's number was completely different than Einstein's. Now, Einstein took, Newton's number was, the amount of deflection was 1.7 arc seconds, I think the number is. Something around there, 1.68 arc seconds. Newton cut it, Einstein cut the number in half to 0.78 or something like that arc seconds. That's a fact, okay? So the amount of deflection that Newton expected was 1.7 arc seconds, and the amount that Einstein was permitting was 0.78 arc seconds. And those numbers are inverted in the sense that the bigger number means less deflection. A smaller angle. So clearly, Einstein made a radical change and took something that was, the numbers are huge when you do the 10 times thing, 40 times 10 to the 39th, and changed it into 10 times, 4 times 10 to the 22 or something. So he took something that was a preposterously huge number and made it a more manageable number. Something that can't possibly be detected into something that could possibly be detected. So without the gimmick, there would be no realistic hope of seeing any gravitational lensing. That's just a fact. All right. Moreover, the lensing problem is not a problem because light rays aren't fixed. Okay, we did that. All right. The other people retracted their comments. Good. So again, you don't get it. You have very little. I have very little obligation. So use your accusations wisely. If you're going to make a claim that Newton said or Einstein said, or that I'm wrong in something I've said, and here's the direct contradiction. First, you have some obligation to cite a source. And I'm just saying that you're just clearly wrong, and you can't keep doing that. And I'm supposed to be patient and say it's okay. You can keep making false assertions that I have to go research and find out why you've made a huge mistake. It's not my obligation to keep correcting you. If you're going to correct me, then make sure you do it right, not wrong. Do it with something called evidence. Don't do it with rubbish you pulled out of your ass. And frankly, to assert that Einstein didn't change anything that Newton hadn't already changed is nonsense. Because that was the whole story. Einstein right, as the New York Times headline. Didn't say Newton right. Okay. So, give you a couple of minutes and like I said, there's some point where I should just say I shouldn't interact with the hostiles because they just don't provoke any constructive conversation. For the people that can't be a little bit respectful in their argument, it just ends up being this wasted time of exchanging insults. Look it up. No, I don't have to look it up. I know the facts, so you're done here. This look it up bullshit is just bullshit. You can't cite a source. You're obviously, in my opinion, completely wrong. So all I can say is, no, I'm not doing that. You're wrong. Newton never asserted, okay, that light is bent less than baseballs or frogs or banana peels. Newton never said that. So it's just nonsense. It's garbage. You're lying, and you're done. I mean, it's clear. I mean, Newton's the guy who made it clear that everything, it's just about velocity. It's not about how big you are. It's just about your velocity. Your orbit is your velocity. One atom moves exactly the same speed as the entire Earth to stay in orbit. One single little atom. The force is proportional to your size. You absorb as much force as your size obliges you to absorb to be bent in your motion. And he made no exemptions for photons. He had no opinion that photons were affected more by gravity. He assumed them to be a mass of one, and the only thing that mattered was their velocity. Their velocity dictates how much they get bent. I like the website Draft Physics. If I can put together a comment, it will be directed at what is already on your website, not somewhere else. Anyway, it is all on the site I see. You know, not all of it, but yes, there's plenty there. Yes. Like I said, not all of it is updated. So there are still some statements that may not be entirely how I would word it today, but it's close enough. Yeah, I think. Not to create any huge amount of confusion. I wouldn't use words like quantons anymore. Just fuck that. You know, sorry. Yes, that's not useful because people just play games with words. So it's best just to understand there's things called force bits and there's things that are matter bits. Just understand the difference between things moving the speed of light and things not moving the speed of light. Those two things are different. I mean, function, they interact with each other, and effectively not with force affects matter, but force doesn't affect force. Matter affects force, which in turn can affect matter. See, but matter doesn't really affect matter. Matter bits bounce off the force. In a sense, matter bits don't hit each other. They're always hitting the force around the matter bits, excreted by the matter bits, reflected by the matter bits. Anyway. All right. 60 seconds. Any last words? Any comment? Anything? I mean, it's just, I just make a little further comment. I mean, the more I think about it, I mean, the more, certain I am about the whole Newton thing and what Newton said. And it's just clear, I mean, gigantically clear that there's nothing in Newton that predicted that photons are twice as affected by gravity, that they're not just like everything else, the inverse square law applies. That's just a provable fact. That can't exist because, again, the whole point of Einstein's change was the fact that he made something that wasn't possible, that wasn't possible under Newton. Ugh, so annoying. I might have the numbers backwards, though. Newton's number was the 78 number, and Einstein's was the 1 point. Well, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But it was just a doubling of the effect. And Newton never There's just nothing. Newton never speculated about anything being capable of absorbing more gravity. It was always a velocity question. You either have the speed or you don't. If you have zero speed, the gravity just pulls you straight in. That's it. We're done. You have velocity against the gravity in some other direction, then the two have to be combined. And the effect is the inverse square law will decide how much deflection there's going to be. And that's it. It's a charge question. Everything has the same charge, the same gravitational charge, in a sense. So you can just forget about its mass and just recognize that how it's affected by something's gravity is always the same. And it's always just based on a charge moving through the gravity, the field. Anyway. I mean, that's how Newton understood it, and that still remains the truth, in my opinion. I mean, clearly by Newton's perception, light was incredibly fast. And so from his perception, its velocity was so fast that there's no gravity that could ever be strong enough to move a photon, bend a photon, because the velocity is so high that there could never be an influence that would be significant. So it's like thinking about the planet Earth moving 3 million meters per second. I mean, obviously, it's not going to stay in the solar system. It's not even going to be bent by black holes. It's not going to care what's in its way at that speed. It's like Newton believing you could like bend a bullet, a lead ball, by with a magnifying, just stick a magnifying glass up and the lead ball would fall into the magnifying glass or something. Newton wasn't an idiot. He knew that wasn't going to happen. All right, so till the next time and such, so forth and whatnot. Back to the usual drudgery and such.